Hi, this is the fellow passenger, and today we are going to look at this.
With you at all times when on the station. For your safety.
Alright, so what's happening there was that I was taking a live audio stream from some source and then processing it, making beats out of it. But before we look into how I did that, I just would like to thank some of my new Patreons. Ben Humphreys Otorola, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Jose Rodriguez and Seth Christian Miller have all signed up to my mid-tier Patreon. It's very much appreciated. All right. I think if you are new to percussion synthesis, I'm going to explain just the basic of that first. If you feel like you know that part, check out the chapters and there will be links in the description if you just want to jump forward to the next part or another part of this video. But we're going to just go through some of the very basics of percussion synthesis. So I think one of the fundamental things that are really good, it's actually not mandatory, but it really helps, is if you have envelopes to control the pitch of your sound. So to make a kick, you would like to have quite a steep drop in, use an envelope to do this. I'm just going to demonstrate this very quickly by taking an operator. Let's see. And if we go here and turn on the pitch envelope, let's just drag that. And you can see the curve here. The sharper that drop, the snappier that kick will be. So that is the thing that we are really going to look into how we're going to manipulate today. If you want to create some very basic percussion, there are two other things that are the very basics that could make really good percussion. That is some form of sine wave and a noise source. Sometimes you use them one or the other, but also really good to use them in combination if you want to create a snare or something like that. But if you want to make something that is a bit more unusual and a bit richer sounding, you can use other waveforms. Not only the basic ones, but it's really interesting on using samples, or what we are going to do today, we are going to use a live audio stream. And why is that interesting? It's because if you have a live audio stream running and you've programmed your beats, that your beat is going to change flavor, but the beat itself will not change. The snare will always happen where the snare is supposed to happen, and the kick and so forth. But the flavor will change slightly depending on the audio feed you are giving it. And if you have a really long audio feed, maybe your entire track can shift in flavor throughout. The other thing that you can do, which is really interesting, like while the beat is running, or you can just keep the same beat and you just swap it up for a completely different audio source, and that will give an entirely new flavor to your beat. So I'm going to give a really quick overview of how I have put my patch together. But don't be afraid, because it's going to probably look a little bit at a glance, it looks really complicated, but I'll just give you a quick overview and then we're going to jump in and we're going to make our own one. It will be quite basic, the one we will make, and I'm just going to mention that the one that I have put together here, I've spent some time on adding different sort of effects and stuff to emphasize the different percussive sounds, etc. If you sign up to my Patreon, you will be able to grab mine and you can use that, and it's got lots of interesting things you can do with it. We will look at that at the end of the video, but let's get into the nitty-gritty. How mine works, and then hopefully it will feel a bit easier when we start doing one together. Just the basics so you can start building your own percussion. So this patch consists of two parts. It is the controller, which is basically the MIDI. And then we got the audio, which is taking care of the audio source and the processing of it. It consists of some basic components, and then they are embellished with loads of different effects and things, which we are going to look at a bit later. But let's start with the MIDI section. To be able to trigger different drum sounds, I am using the drum rack in Ableton, and then I have given them the names of the type of the sounds that I'm sort of creating. And as a basic starting point, I've added two shifter plugins, which you can find in MIDI and the shaper MIDI. That's what these are. Sorry, not the shifter plugin. We get to that later. But the shaper MIDI, which creates that envelope decay effect that we're looking for. And then we're going to map them. So this saying decay here is mapped to something that decays the volume, so you don't get very long sounds, or depending on how long you want them. And then the pitch, which will take care of the pitch control. And the same for the snare. Some of them also, like the hi-hat here, have got an expression control, and this one also has an expression control, the percussion, because I wanted the ability to change the flavor of some other parameters in the sound. And then in the audio bit, it needs to be a sound source coming in. You saw in the test or the demo at the beginning where I was using a record player, I was using a video. You can also use your microphone if you just want to speak into it, or you can use a sample or whatever it is that you want. But also you can use, while you're developing this, you can use the echo effect and just turn the noise up. Don't worry about it if you don't know what that is. We will do that in a moment when we start setting this up. Basically, some form of audio coming into this channel, whether you want to use the external input. Then we have an audio effects rack where I create a chain for each of the sounds that I want to control. And in each and every one where I want the pitch to be affected, I got the shifter plugin. Now we get to the shifter plugin, which you find in audio effects and pitch modulation, and that's allowing us to drop that pitch of whatever audio is coming through. But we don't just want to pitch it down and then you have it sort of growling really low frequency. We also got a utility plugin where we are affecting the gain or the audio output. So you basically start at the original volume, and then you sort of pitch that down in the same manner. And depending on how long that is, you can have really long kick sounds and you can have really short kick sounds. And there is a lot of other gubbins that goes on with it. But yeah, in short, there's a controller which triggers those envelopes, and those envelopes are mapped to something that changes the pitch and something that changes the volume of these sounds. So we can actually, we don't get the constant sound coming through all the time. All right, these probably look super confusing. There's lots of stuff going on here. We are not going to go into that amount of detail. I'm just going to give you the basics so you can start playing around yourself and start making your own flavored percussion. So I'm just going to collapse that and mute it. And now we're going to make our very own. And how do we do that? We are going to need a MIDI track. And we're going to need an audio track. Let's group those. And the MIDI track is going to be our MIDI controller. Just going to name that MIDI controller. Why did that get a hash thing at the beginning? And this is the audio processing. Let's start with the MIDI controller. We're going to take the drum rack. And we're just going to start off with a kick drum. So we do the shaper plugin 1, and let's call that volume decay. And then we take another one and we are going to name that pitch decay. Or we'll just call it pitch. The other thing that we are going to do with these, we don't want these to be velocity sensitive. You can add that in later, but for this, I'm going to turn velocity sensitivity off completely, because otherwise by default, if you're programming a beat, it doesn't come in at 100 velocity unless you've set it to be that at default. You can play around with that later. So we got some pitch drops, and now when I need to go down a few octaves. Now when I hit the MIDI key, you can see how these envelopes are triggered, but we don't have any sound yet because we don't have a sound source. So let's create a kick. And to make it easy, we need some sort of sound source, and we can play around with different samples later. But as mentioned, you can use the echo to just create a bit of noise. So if you open an echo, you go into character, you click noise here, and you turn that up. Just going to mute that now, but you could hear it adds, it's meant for tape noise if you're using this as a old-fashioned tape delay. But that's going to be good enough for us. And now we want to take this source and affect it by these effects. So we need a utility for the volume. So let's do that. Do I have yes, I have a limiter there. Otherwise I'm worried that it could get very loud otherwise. So here for the volume decay, we want to go from 50%, because if we go for more, it's actually going to make it louder than the original sound, and that could be painful. So as you can see here in the audio processing, that is 50%. Otherwise, it will just add 35 decibels to that noise, and that's just going to be painful. So we do that, change that to 50, so that makes the range between 0 and 50. And we map that, click the map, and then we go into here, and we click on the gain. So now when we turn the echo on, that noise source, you can see the noise is coming through, but the gain is set to 0. So now, actually, when I hit the MIDI key, triggering this, I'm turning the volume down. If you want to have a longer one, you can turn that up. But let's stick to that for now. This doesn't sound like a kick at all, does it? And so to be able to turn this into more of a kick sound, there's another few things that we are going to do. We are going to need to change the pitch, which I mentioned earlier. So we are going to go into pitch modulation and get a shifter. And do we want to set that to frequency? We also want to, let's just add that in for now. So we do the pitch and we go into here. Also quite quiet, so let's just add a limiter here and just, anyway. Still doesn't sound very much like a kick, does it? So the other thing that we want to do in this chain is to add a filter. So we can have a little bit of a noise at the beginning, but we want to generally focusing on the low frequencies. But as you hear, this is sort of very high pitch now. So to adjust that even further, we can go in and add another shifter that just still it doesn't sound very kick-like, does it? So we go into MIDI controller, and we probably don't want this pitch to go all the way to the top and then down to the bottom, so you get the really high pitch sound. And maybe we want it also a bit longer. happens if we put that shifter after this? Maybe we want that. Let's add some effects in to help emphasize this. Let's do a drum bass. Ah, the other thing we can do, I haven't thought about that. Can't remember if I did that in mine. That just as well as having the pitch dropping, we can click on this because that will allow us to map this to multiple things. So we can map that to the filter as well. Ah, here we're getting somewhere, but we probably don't want that to... Now we're going to starting to get into some kick territory. I think you get the principle. Obviously, you can spend quite a lot of time, add an EQ out the frequencies you don't like, etc. But I'm going to add this into a group now. And let's just program a stupid little beat here. That sounds a bit limping, but that's... Let's say that that is fine for now. So now when we have put this in an audio effects rack, we can name that kick. So you click on that little button to open up the chains, and let's just copy that. And mute it for now. So now we have two chains. So the kick will obviously be processed. Let's turn the noise off for a bit. So the kick will be processed. Then we do another one that is called snare. Snare. Let's just solo that for now. Sorry about that noise. We need to program a noise pattern for that one as well. So if we go here to our drum, we do that, and then we can actually name these. Rename kick, rename snare, and then we have the two chains here, and we want to unmap those because we want to map this to our snare layer, and then we're going to not have that horrible constant noise. Which one was that? Oh, that's the volume decay. So let's set that to this, and we set the pitch to our pitch shifter, and then this shifter we probably want to turn up because the snare we want to be much higher than the kick. But let's program in some snares, and then we have to turn on the noise again. Sorry. Oh Oh, sorry, turn on this. Get slightly more snare sound, but we probably want them to be much shorter. Starts to sound in a sort of snare territory already. So let's add that in together with the kick now. Oh, what am I doing? That's what we want. And we might not. We want the kick to be much more muted, don't we? Let's go for the audio processing for the snare. Oh, that's, sorry, I'm in the kick. That's what we want. We want the kick to be slightly louder. Maybe we can add some saturation to it, just to add a little bit of volume. So we got our little beat going. I hope that gives you enough of like a start. We can do, should we just do a hi-hat very quickly as well? And then we can just run some other audio sources through here. So if we create another chain and we call that hat. And let's see, for this one, we're also going to need a utilities because we want some decay. We also probably want a shift. We definitely want a filter because for the hi-hat, we want to high pass that. I'm just going to set that randomly now and we can listen what sounds nice. So if we create a new chain here, let's mute that for now. What did I just do? Did I not? What an idiot I am. That we don't want to have in here. We want to have that in the audio, not in the MIDI. So if we change that to hat, here we want this. So in here in the hat, we want to have a shaper and we connect that to the volume. And we want to turn the velocity off and we want to set that to 50. And let's do a little hi-hat. Oh yes, we need to create a hat layer here. That's what we want to do. And then we, oh yes, we had already done that, but let's do it again. So if we turn the volume on that one, let's go to the MIDI here. That was a very lame hi-hat pattern. That will do. So here is where you can then add your expression control as well, where you might want to have a little, let's say we add a bit of random to the rate. We don't never want to have quite 0, but we don't want to have full either. Then we get a bit of a hi-hat sound. Now we are obviously having noise as our source, but if we take a different source, you will see what that sounds like. That's going to come through, especially through the hi-hat now, because the hi-hat is just high passing it. So I'm going to show you, if you feel like it becomes too transparent and you want to add, how you can just turn it a bit more hi-hatty by introducing some noise. So I am just going to find some of my field recording stuff here. There will be, let's take that choir sound, for example. So if we drop this in here and we turn off our echo so we don't get any noise. So you can hear the original sound coming through quite a lot there now. If we take this and we just add some more hi-hatty stuff in. So the thing that you can add in, if you go into reverb and resonances in the audio effects and you pick the vocoder, that's going to add a layer of noise to this. So, and then you can obviously manipulate this a whole lot more. I hope that felt like a little bit of an introduction. This sounds very unpolished, but it takes quite a long time to manipulate it into something that sounds decent. So now let's look at the original one. So if you want to grab mine, what I would love to see, if someone would sign up to my Patreon, grab this and take it further, add more different types of percussion, and also come up with perhaps better ways of manipulating it to make it sound interesting. So let's look at this. So as you can hear, this one sounds a lot fuller, and I just want to talk to you about this one a bit now. So what I've done to make this easy for you to use, I have mapped a bunch of parameters here in the this audio effects layer, where there's a master transpose. There's a master volume, and you can change a whole lot of these parameters. So if we just actually, oh, stupid, I am going to set to exclude this from the exclude from randomization, because the volume we don't want to, and maybe not that one either. The master stuff, exclude from randomization. So you can obviously take this, program your own rhythms in here. This is just a default one that it will come with, and manipulate these, add more percussion if you want to. And to add this into your own project, I'm just going to show you how to do that. You take it and the beat block project, which this is called, drag it in, wait a moment. So now you just have another copy of that in there. Quite straightforward, really. So it will be available on my Patreon. Grab it, download it. I hope you will enjoy it and would love to hear from you. There's going to be, now in December, I'm also going to do a massive sample drop like I did in last year. It's going to be a few gigabytes of IEDM samples that will be free for you to use in whatever way you like. So I hope you will be checking back before Christmas, and have a good day. Thank you. Bye.